We are about to get hot takey all up in here because this may be the best passing offense that Ole Miss has seen all season.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast out there. I'm your host, Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member. On today's show, we'll discuss why this could be a breakout performance for Kewan Lacy against Washington State. This is a defense that has been struggling with tackling. It's the perfect opportunity for a back who thrives on making defenders miss to kind of show out a little bit. Next, we talk about how the Ole Miss defense needs to create explosive plays and apply pressure to rattle whichever quarterback is in the game, especially in what will be the most hostile environment that quarterback has faced so far. But first, I will drop a bold, hot take. This might be the best passing offense that Ole Miss has faced all season, and that could be the key to upsetting the number 4 Ole Miss Rebels. All of this and more on today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Remember, we're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. And a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. Yeah, you heard me correct. This may be the best passing offense that Ole Miss has seen to date. Now, I do not expect Washington State to threaten Ole Miss. I do not expect it to be closer than what the line is of 33 points. What I am saying is this is the best passing offense that Ole Miss has gone up against. And everybody might, well, what about Arkansas? Arkansas went off. Well, that was mainly Taylor Green. The running the ball, the Mike Washington stuff, all the peripherals kind of unlocked the Ole Miss defense. Well, Washington State right now is doing what they're doing through the air. And right now, Jackson Potter, who was the starter that opened the season that got benched against North Texas, completed 70% of his passes for about 600 yards over 3 games. Zevi Eckhouse completing 65% of his passes for about 600 yards. All of this. They are a monumentally efficient team throwing the football. And it makes sense because everybody needs to remember that a year ago, Ben Arbuckle was the guy calling plays on the offensive side of the ball. This is kind of a meta version of what Oklahoma is now. Everybody talks about John Mateer. Well, he was at Washington State last year. And because of that, throwing and catching the ball, they do that pretty well. They do that really well, if we're going to be honest. And they do it all without the services of a run game. They have ran for a total of 500 yards this season. And of that 500 yards, 5 explosive runs wipes off 20% of that amount. They do not run the ball very well. So they're doing all of this without the benefit of a run game. And the quarterbacks, to me, are impressive. But if you look at the receivers, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 18 players have caught a pass for Washington State this season. This is a team that's just 3-2. It's not like they're steamrolling everybody to where you can put the backups in. They're not scoring a lot of points. They only average scoring about 20 points per game. But they are putting this kind of stat open. Today, when I started looking at some of the tape on Washington State, their game against Washington, their game against North Texas, their game against Colorado State, didn't see their game against Idaho, but that tells you schematically when they're working at the top efficiency, they're pretty good throwing the football. They're really good throwing the football. Their problem is on the other parts of the game. That is what head coach Jimmy Rogers, the former South Dakota State Jackrabbit head coach at Washington State, that is what he has to fix. That is his task, because throwing the ball right now is the strength of this team. And they've had some disasters this season. They gave up 59 points to North Texas, and a lot of them in a quick burst in the second quarter of their game with North Texas. They ended up with 5 first-half turnovers. 9 for the season or something like that. 5 in the first half of North Texas. Washington came to Pullman, Washington, scored 59 points. They gave up 35. That was the best offensive output of this team in a game that I kind of watched the highlights of that game more so than the other because I wanted to see what was working for both teams because Washington State was going to be unbelievably up for that game. For everybody that doesn't know, that Apple Cup is like the Egg Bowl in the state of Washington. So they were going to be up and give you their absolute best. Damon Williams, by the way, absolutely balled in that game. 4 touchdown passes and a touchdown running, if I'm not mistaken. So this passing offense has to do so much heavy lifting for this Washington State team. There's just pieces that they need to fit that in the future you can see how they will get to where they want to be. But as it sits right now, they're just not quite there, other than the passing game. The passing game is the only thing that should scare you, honestly, mightily about the Washington State Cougars. Now, the good news for Ole Miss is other than one half, they've done all right against the passing game. But they've played Georgia State, who threw for 80 yards. They played Kentucky, who threw for like 170. They played LSU, who threw for like 190. But Arkansas kind of opened them up going for more than 300 yards. Don't forget about Jake Retzlaff from Tulane, who completely got benched in that game. The secondary played really well, and this is going to be a big test for them. We haven't heard Antonio Kite's name in the last couple of weeks, and that is because of the reputation he is garnering on that side of the field. They're going at Ricky Fletcher or Chris Graves. Whoever is on the other corner, that is where the ball is going. And as this develops throughout the season, if you get this win, this is a nice, honestly, I don't mean this in a negative way, but a nice scout team look at what Oklahoma is going to be in 3 weeks. You can find out what works here and use the same thing there. But when looking at this game, literally, like I said earlier, the passing game is the only thing that should give anybody any pause. Washington State, they're not particularly good against the run. Washington State is not particularly good running the football. Special teams, they could be pretty good. I'd have to see that. But pass defense as well, they've been opened up from time to time. North Texas and Washington threw for 4 touchdowns apiece. So if you want the good news, 3 out of the 4 offensive and defensive categories, you're probably doing pretty well. The one thing that they're particularly good at is something they can hurt you with from time to time. And us being Ole Miss fans, we always have pause when it comes to stuff like that because they are probably the best passing offense that Ole Miss has faced to this point this season. They're not near the best team that Ole Miss has faced to this point during the season. But throwing the football, they would probably be first on that list with Arkansas second and then LSU. We'll look to see how Pete Golding deals with this. This could be a drop 8 game, if we're going to be honest about it. Could be a drop 8 game to where you just dare Washington State to run the football. And maybe they'll do what LSU wouldn't do and just stick to the run, just as Ole Miss does the drop 8. Stick to the run. Maybe that's the game plan. We'll see exactly how that goes coming up. You know, Washington State also has shown a dangerous habit of putting the ball at risk when trying to make plays. And that's something that Pete Golding and the Ole Miss defense absolutely have to capitalize on in this game. Catching the gifts from Wazoo will be the top priority for the Ole Miss Rebels Saturday, whether it's forced fumbles from edge pressures or interceptions from risky throws. Turnover creation could flip the game pretty early. We'll talk about how Ole Miss can turn those opportunities into points what Golding's defense needs to do to stay disciplined, and why this matchup could hinge on takeaway margin. It's all coming up next. You know, Mazda crafts cars for those who simply do more than move. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings that same intention to how they craft every model. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls, and with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence throughout most every season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. You know, most people can't name all of their financial accounts, even what they're worth, honestly, whether it's a 401k, properties, or investments. And while you don't have the full picture, and when that happens, you can end up leaving money on the table. That is why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. You put organizing your finances off, well, Monarch is for you. They do all the heavy lifting. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money, all without ever touching a spreadsheet. Maximizing investments, increasing your savings rates, easily reviewing finances with your partner and or financial advisor, keeping a clear view of your financial health week to week and long-term, etc. That is Monarch Money. Don't let a financial opportunity like this slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. Do us a favor, like, subscribe, and comment in the video. Subscribe to the podcast on whichever audio podcatcher you're listening to, and give it a 5-star review. It costs absolutely nothing, but helps keep all of this free. If you want more, join the Insiders program in the subtext link down below. No trolls, 14-day free trial, and the easiest way ever to cancel, so give it a try. And don't forget to check out a second listen on the network. Nearly every team, college or pro, is ready for you. So we started with the scary when it comes to Washington State. Now let's talk about some of the other stuff and give the keys to this matchup, because honestly, this is a pretty cut and dry matchup for the Ole Miss Rebels, with the Georgia Bulldogs coming up the week after, the Oklahoma Sooners after that as well. This is a just get past it type of game. And Ole Miss is favored in this game. Ole Miss is favored by 33.5 points. The over-under has gone up a point to 58.5, thanks to our friends at FanDuel for reporting that. Ole Miss should win this game fairly easily, and there's reasons because of that. If you just listen to the first segment, you would look at this betting line and say, okay, this doesn't seem right. How can they have the best passing attack that Ole Miss has seen and be a 33.5 point underdog? Well, I'm about to explain a little bit. They are a good team. They are head coached by Jimmy Rogers, who came over from South Dakota State, the former Jackrabbit head coach, built a little bit of a dynasty in South Dakota. And he moved to Washington State, moving up from FCS to the group of 6, I guess we can call it. And he is going to build Washington State potentially in that same image. It's going to be a well-coached football team. They're going to do stuff very well. But right now, the best players on the team are kind of FCS players that transferred over from South Dakota State, and the players transferred out after they lost the coach to Wake Forest. And this football team is a little bit clunky, to say the least. They turn the ball over. They have problems defensively in multiple levels. It's one of those games to where Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss should named their score. So looking at the keys to this game, and it's pretty simple when looking at the keys to this game. When you have an opportunity to make an explosive play on defense, make the play. The whole reason why Arkansas was a close game was Ole Miss didn't catch interceptions. They dropped 3 interceptions directly in their hands, or either that or they had dumb penalties that wiped them off the board. Arkansas ended up scoring after that and made the game closer than it should have been. Honestly, that game should have been 41-17-ish the way it ended, but it ended up being the score that it was because Ole Miss allowed Arkansas to stay in the game. You have to have a clean game, and Ole Miss from time to time has had problems playing clean games. But when you have the opportunity to make the explosive play against Washington State, you better make it with the way this team can throw the football. Now, on defense or on offense, stretch the Washington State defensive line in the run game. Use the corner, aim for the edges, run counter, run outside zone. You run the jet sweep. You have a chance to make a lot of hay doing that. The weak part of this Washington State defense appears to be the edge. And if you use tempo, whenever you're trying to compensate for different parts of the defense, when you use tempo, you can take advantage of that, and it's more likely that they're going to bust. So tempo and the edge rushing, that would be an important key in this game. And like I said, Ole Miss needs to play a clean game because the only way that Wazoo can beat you is if you help them. And Ole Miss doesn't need turnovers. They don't need penalties. Just play a game real similar to like you did against Tulane. And if you win by 1 point or 60 points, it doesn't matter because Ole Miss is 4th in the country and they have all the style points they need where just winning games is going to get you on the list. You're exactly where you need to be. Just win the football game. When looking at these keys, you can say, okay, yes, I see that. In the game against Washington, which is the only team with comparable athletes on the roster that Ole Miss has, okay? That's the reason I put so much stock in that. Not the Colorado State game, not the Idaho game, not the San Diego State game, not even the North Texas game. I looked at the Washington game first because of those comparable athletes. And Washington State had monumental trouble covering the edges. Not necessarily the outside tall sweep because you can run those plays down from time to time. Counter was something they had a big problem with because of their hyper aggressiveness, and they have to be hyper aggressive because of some stuff they're trying to cover up. This causes them to bite on play fakes. This causes them to be affected by the deep ball from time to time. It'll be really interesting to see how Ole Miss attacks this defense, especially the script that is built, constructed early in the game. Ole Miss needs to get off to a hot start. Force a team that has had trouble scoring points this season to score points. This season, Washington State has averaged 20 points a game. That's 13 points against Idaho State. They've scored 10 points against North Texas. They scored, 20 points or something like that against Colorado State. It was 20-3. And the big offensive explosion against Washington, I think they scored 35 points. But a lot of those were late as well. I think that Ole Miss should do exactly what we think it should be in this game because of the weaknesses that can be exploited. And when the head coach of Washington State was mentioned and talked to and press conference was had, he talked about how they struggle missing tackles again. And anytime you struggle missing tackles, especially on the edge, that feels like this is going to be a Kewan Lacy type game. Now, we'll talk about that in just a second. In our final segment, this matchup has Kewan Lacy written all over it. Everything from this game, from the defensive fronts to the tempo that Ole Miss wants to play in, sets up perfectly for the Rebels to lean on their run game. Lacy's combination of burst, vision, and physicality could be the difference maker against the defense that tends to over pursue from time to time. Expect Lane Kiffin to use motion and misdirection to open up some running lanes, setting up play action opportunities. Once the ground game gets rolling, we'll talk about why this feels like a tailor-made game for Lacy and how the Rebels' rushing attack can control the tempo in this game. Coming up next. All right, this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Every day we make decisions, but on Prize Picks, they can actually be decisions that get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of the football season with Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Playing Prize Picks is such fun, simple way to add a little more excitement to your football. Just pick more or less on projections like Josh Allen passing yards or Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown, and you're in the game. I love how quick it is. You can make your lineup up in under a minute. It's also a fun way to follow other players in the app and use their lineups and copy that with just one click. So download the Prize Picks app and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 off on lineups. $50 in lineups after you play that first $5 lineup. That's Locked On College for $50 in lineups after that first $5 lineup gets played. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. All right, let's get into specifics just a little bit before we get out of here and talk about what we need to be watching for in this game. There's 3 bullet points, in my opinion, that will carry the day for the Rebels. This looks like a big game for running the ball with Kewan Lacy. Just run the football. I think Washington State's giving up 150 yards per game running the football, but it's pretty consistent about the way that it looks. If you look at game by game on their rushing ability, they gave up 33 yards to Idaho, but then it's 133, 247, 290. Oh, it's receiving. Sorry. Rushing is they gave up 188 to Idaho, 82 to San Diego State, 163 to Washington, or North Texas, 173 to Washington, and 146 to Colorado State. This is a game that is tailor-made for a rushing quarterback and, of course, Kewan Lacy. And number 2 is when the ball is thrown to you by a Washington State quarterback, catch it. Wazoo puts the ball at risk this season because they have to, because they struggle running the football, because defensively they can be leaky at times. They have to take chances to push the ball down the field. Whenever that happens, interceptions happen. Remember, 5 of those turnovers came against North Texas in one game. They ended up with 4 interceptions currently, something like that. I think they have 4 interceptions. Let me just look at that real quick. 5 interceptions. Jackson Potter has 3. Zevi Eckhouse has 2. So 5 of them, and 4 fumbles also as well, for a total of 9. And they fumbled it 8 times on the year. So this feels like an opportunity to catch the ball when it's put in risk. They're going to have to play catch up. They're going to have to do some hero ball type stuff. Whenever that happens, make the catch. And do not, under any circumstance, give Washington State a short field. Make them drive to score 75 yards and allow Pete Golding's defense to be Pete Golding's defense. If you do these things, you should win it going away. Again, Ole Miss is a 33.5 point favorite. They should win the game somewhere in the ballpark of 50-10, something like that, and get ready to play the Georgia Bulldogs next week. This is a big game for timing. We talked with Bill Flowers over the course of last week when he mentioned that players hate bye weeks. They hate it. The LSU game in 2003 was a bye week, and there was like a rhythm issue at the beginning of the game. And by the time they got it fixed, there was like 1 quarter left to go. This Washington State game gives you a chance to get right a little bit after the bye week, kind of handle out some of that stuff. So maybe you start off, there's a little bit of a slow start throwing the football. You need that running game to carry you with the Kewan Lacy type stuff. I talked about it and I mean it. I watched the highlights. They struggle on the edge. They genuinely do, to where you can run off tackle on them pretty consistently for explosive plays if you know how to do it. Pass rush wise, they get after you, and they can get after you on the defensive line. So it's going to be imperative that they Ole Miss gets rid of the football, throwing the ball, and runs the ball on this defense and plays with tempo and gets them, a little bit tired. Now, one thing that'll be interesting, the only other time they played down in hot, humid conditions was against North Texas in Denton, Texas, which is a little bit less humid than coming down and playing in Oxford, Mississippi. Traveling cross country, the humidity, all of that stuff could end up being a factor in this game. So if they put the ball on the ground, catch it. That's all it is. Pick up the ball. Defense, make your explosive plays, and it's about time to get to the quarterback. But Washington State, by the way, does a pretty good job of protecting the passer. They've only given up 8 sacks over the course of the year. So we'll see exactly how that goes. Anyway, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the front door of Ole Miss. Google Ole Miss podcast, and you'll see what we mean. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. It helps the show, and it's absolutely free. Your support means the world to us. And in another big moment for Locked On, college football fans, Locked On and Fire TV are presenting College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside two-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local expert. It's a college football preview show that only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. Hotty toddy, everybody, and remember, analytics is just the old English word that means bad football. We'll see you tomorrow.